Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third V-Star Live of the summer. It's almost summer, right? We're all waiting for summer. So hello, my name is Virginia Cabrera, and I currently serve as the Assistant Director in Orientation Programs. You might have met me last week during V-Star Live as well. We're incredibly excited for you all to join us tonight to talk about academic advising at Purdue and what that even means and how are we going to support you throughout your time here at Purdue. And so I want to talk a little bit about V-Star since it launched just yesterday. And already 332 students have completed V-Star. So congratulations to you. I hope all that you learned in V-Star was incredibly helpful. And we look forward to the thousands of other students that still have to get through V-Star. As a reminder, you have until June 30th to complete Virtual Star and meet with your academic advisor, some of which you will meet tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our interim associate vice provost for teaching and learning, Dr. Heather Sarvadi-Saib.
Thanks so much, Virginia. And I'm really glad to be here tonight and really looking forward to the conversation. Academic advising is such an important part of being a college student, and particularly at Purdue, we want to really give you some useful and practical information tonight about academic advising and how it can make a difference for you right from the start and all the way through your college journey here at Purdue. And so as Virginia mentioned, I'm Heather Sarvadi-Saib. I'm actually a faculty member here at Purdue, been here since 2000, and my area is counseling psychology, and a lot of my work is actually looking at college students and their experience in college, challenges they face and how they cope with those challenges. And so I've really been fortunate this last year to serve as the interim associate vice provost for teaching and learning. And so let's bring on Molly Gilbert, who's gonna join us now, and we'll talk through a little bit about academic advising in a general way, and then we'll get even more specific as we have a panel of academic advisors who are here with us tonight. So excellent. Molly?
Hello, good evening.
Great. So Molly, could you tell us what your role is on campus and how long it is that you've been at Purdue?
Sure. So like Heather said, my name is Molly Gilbert. I serve as the Assistant Director for Training and Strategic Initiatives in the Office of University Undergraduate Academic Advising, which is a really long way to say that I help support advisors on campus. I help make sure that they are up to date in training and their knowledge and professional development. And then I just support them in other ways as needed across campus. And so I have been at Purdue for 10 years. Prior to moving into this role a couple of years ago, I was an academic advisor in the College of Science and then as well as the College of Engineering. So I have been an advisor as well for quite a few years before moving into my current role.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Molly. So what is an academic advisor? Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Yes, great question. So your academic advisor is that person at Purdue who is kind of your constant contact throughout your whole undergraduate career. And so they're going to help you with planning your courses. They're going to help you plan for your career goals that you might have, different internships and experiences that are going to help you get to where you want to be upon graduation. They're kind of that spoke or the hub in the middle of the wheel, right? So if you think of a big wheel, you've got your academic advisor, and then they can help get you to the different offices on campus and different experiences that really will help you grow in whatever way you're looking to do that as a student. And so they're kind of that go-to resource for you throughout your entire undergraduate career at Purdue.
Thanks, Molly. So here's a follow-up from that, really, because many of the students watching have had a relationship with a guidance counselor or a college counselor within their high schools, or maybe even an experience at a previous institution with another academic advisor. So how do you see the roles of academic advisor here at Purdue distinct from guidance counselors, particularly in a high school setting?
Yeah, so guidance counselors can be different across high schools, right? I don't know about you guys, but for me, I had a different guidance counselor every year. I didn't even know their names. We just went in, we talked about classes, they told me what I had to take, and then I left. Your academic advisor at Purdue could be no different than that person that I had experience with in high school. At Purdue, you're required to meet with your academic advisor once a semester at minimum. And so that required time is when you're going to talk about classes and do that sort of thing, planning for the next semester. But like I said, your academic advisor is really your go-to resource. And so they're going to help you with different things that you need. So if you need referrals to other offices, they're going to do that sort of thing. If you need an ally just to help you kind of get through a situation, they're going to be that person for you. If you need a little extra accountability and you may need to keep a snack that is your reward if you do what you're supposed to do in their office, they might be that person for you. So your advisor is really so much more than just someone who's going to help you plan for classes. They're really that cheerleader that's going to help see you from right now when you're going through VSTAR all the way through commencement or graduation, hopefully in 4 years. And so they really are, you have the opportunity to really get to know this person. They're going to really want to get to know you, and they can be a great resource and asset for you throughout your whole time at Purdue.
And that really starts at VSTAR, right? We really want to encourage students, get that VSTAR done so that you can meet with your academic advisor very soon here and really start building that foundation of the relationship with your academic advisor, because the relationship is critical. They want to get to know students, right? and really want students to get to know them. So you mentioned that students might access an academic advisor for a whole range of issues and even for support, to questions about navigating Purdue in a variety of different ways. Could you maybe give an example of a challenge, maybe when you're, serving students, what might be an example of a challenge that you helped, a student manage and move through?
Yeah. So I loved my students, and there are so many different ways that we would work things through. I loved when they would pop by my office and we would have great celebrations about something exciting that just happened. Maybe they got the residence hall for the next year that they really, really wanted, or they got an internship opportunity. Things like that were really exciting. But then they would also come by when they needed a little extra help with something. And so I had a student in my last year of advising who I don't think I will ever forget this. They were really struggling with accountability and kind of keeping themselves on task, trying to get their projects done at the end of the semester, everything that they needed to accomplish. And they said, what I really need is kind of an accountability buddy. Like, I need someone to house the reward for me, and then I will come and check in, and if I do what I'm supposed to do, you can give me the reward. Would you do that? And I was like, of course. Yeah, I got some shelf space. And so that student brought in a box of zebra cakes and a pack of Diet Coke, and that was their reward when they kind of when they accomplished everything that they set out to do. And they came to my office every day by 3 o'clock, and we'd have a little chat about how their day went. And they would either get the snacks, some days they didn't, but they would. And it was just that, had those extra little conversations that I was able to have with that student. We talked about so much more than their to-do list. And so that student is currently in grad school, and I still talk to them on a very regular basis, and they just come by and check in and let me know how things are going. And so that was one, they just needed that little extra push to get them right over the end. And it didn't, interfere in my way. I didn't have to go check on them, but I was there that they could check in with. And that is what that student needed. So we got it done, and I got a little snack at the end out of it.
And a great example of that relationship building and how important it is, and we want it to be. So what role do family members play in really supporting and encouraging students around their academic advising experience?
Yeah, so families and other support system, especially right now. So up until you kind of get to high school graduation, you've got parents, family members, coaches, people surrounding you to kind of help you get where you need to be. And they have spent the last 18 years being your main support system. And they're still a very important support for you as you come into Purdue. We do follow what's called FERPA, which are the Federal Education Privacy. I'm blanking on the official words, but basically what that is it's a federal law that protects student educational information. And so up until now, parents and families have been encouraged to know everything that's going on with their student and every grade, every move. And then that switches once you get to Purdue. And it's really, we're trying to teach your students how to be adults and how to, once they graduate Purdue, they can be, kind of great members of society and know how to navigate things. And so, we are partners. The academic advisor is a partner with families. And so if there are things that you're noticing on your end that aren't quite right, we want to know about it, because we want to make sure that we are reaching out to your student and we're kind of giving them a little bit of extra care that's needed. But at the same time, we cannot reach out to you if we're noticing things. And so that relationship is really between the advisor and the student. But there is that partnership with families at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think the other thing that comes to mind for me is how how much families can encourage students to access, right, their academic advisor and to access the resources that are available on campus. We know the research says if family members encourage students, they're more likely to use those resources that do exist on campus. And I always think about help seeking as a skill, right? And how are we all fostering, students' ability to seek those resources when they need to, when they know they don't have to and they shouldn't have to cope with a situation or try to navigate a situation on their own. And I know that's a key role for academic advisors, is to support students in that way.
That's such a great point. And I think too, I remember I would call my mom on a very regular basis. I would stand in line in the residence hall to get to the payphone, and I would call my mom. And the first thing that she would say every time is, well, have you talked to your advisor? And my answer was always like, oh no. So, and luckily my mom was very well trained by the time I got to school as the youngest of four. But that was, I vividly remember that was her answer every time. Have you talked to your advisor?
That's great. That's great. Speaks to maybe why you are where you are now. Well, yes. Okay. So what might you offer, or what thoughts come to mind when we think about advising appointments, maybe across the academic colleges?
Yeah, so the nuts and bolts of the advising appointment are really going to be the same across campus. Every student on campus has to do the same sorts of things to register for classes, and there are different types of tasks that you have to accomplish as a student. Every advisor is going to want to know about how your current classes are going. They want to know if, exactly like you said, if there are different resources that they need to encourage you to read or access, or maybe just make sure that you know about. They want to know how you are as a person. And so they want to know, especially with your first year at Purdue, they're really going to ask you questions about different clubs and organizations that you've joined, and how life is going if you're living in a residence hall or if you're living off campus, how that's going, all of that, those kinds of things. And so I really encourage you to be honest with them and share that information. That can be a really key part in kind of getting the groove of Purdue and getting to know campus and find kind of your place. Your advisor can be really helpful in kind of you navigating that and figuring that out. And so, yeah, those appointments, they're going to ask you a lot of questions. I used to always tell my students, now here comes the question time. I'm going to ask you a ton of questions. And so we'd kind of get used to that. And then by the time they were seniors, they would rattle off answers before I even asked the questions because they knew where they were just going to have to answer them. And so be prepared for questions. Be ready to ask them whatever questions you have, even if they're not related to your classes. Advisors, have been around Purdue for a very long time, so they're going to know a ton of information that's not related to your academics at all. So don't hesitate to ask them questions, anything that's going on or that you're worried about or that you're excited about. I always really liked those appointments, and I think they're pretty similar across campus, that it's really just a conversation about how things are going. And then you're going to spend a little bit of time talking about, okay, here's what we need to do to plan for the next semester to get you where you want to go.
Okay, great. That's very, very helpful. Thank you, Molly. So now we'll shift actually to our panel. And so Sanjana, Nate, and Leela, thank you so much for being here tonight. Excellent. Welcome. And I have some, I think, really good questions for you as well. But before we get to the questions, if you could each tell us your role on campus and how long you've been at Purdue, that would be excellent. And Sanjana, how about you start?
Thank you, Heather. It's good to be here tonight. My name is Sanjana Day. I've been at Purdue for about 6 years now. The first 4 years, I worked for the advising office for the Krannert School of Management, which is Purdue's business school. And the last 2 years or so, I've been in the role of Senior Academic Advisor / Student Program Coordinator for the College of Health and Human Sciences, which is a mouthful, but the two main hats that I wear in my role is I am an academic advisor for the Speech Language Hearing Sciences major within our college, And I also supervise the Boiler Mentor first year peer mentoring program for our college, which is a requirement for all first year students that come in receiving the Emerging Leaders Scholarship, which is a very prestigious scholarship. So, yep, that's about it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Nate?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nate Engelberth. I'm the Director of Academic Programs in Agricultural and Biological Engineering, and then I'm also the current chair of PACADA, the Purdue Academic Advisors Association. I've been at Purdue for just under 10 years now, and in my role in ABE, I advise students, I help them with job placement, I manage some staff, and also work with our curriculum and our faculty to make sure that things align for our students and for the outcomes that students are expecting. And so just look forward to answering some questions and chatting with you all tonight.
Great, thanks. And Leela?
Hello, and I am Leela Mixon. I am the Associate Director of Exploratory Studies, which is a program at Purdue that invites students to come to Purdue as explorers. So these are students who have not declared a major. As the Associate Director, I help manage the department, but I advise students, and all of our students are undecided students. So we also teach a 3-credit-hour course called Academic and Career Planning, which is a cornerstone of our program. So I am also an instructor, and I coordinate programs in our office and take care of other initiatives.
And somehow all 3 of them had the time to come tonight with all that they are doing, which is excellent. So the first question I have is, as we've been talking about, we're now at the very start of the V-STAR process, where our first year students are meeting with their academic advisors for the very first time. And so just wanted your thoughts on what students can expect in this very first appointment and how they might best prepare to meet with their advisors. Anyone can start.
Well, I'll start. I've already sent out my first invitation to students for an appointment. So I think the best way to prepare is read the email that I send. It is full of information. It's greeting you, it's telling you how to prepare. And in that preparation, because so many majors at Purdue do rely on math as a foundation, I ask students to just sort of think about, like, where do they want to start? Which math level do they want to start at Purdue? And if they feel like they want to start at a different level, then maybe they're currently eligible to take the ALEX placement exam. And I would say finally, after that, after reading the information and maybe thinking about math, I would say just have an open mind. Be open just to the conversation. I typically ask inquiring questions because I want to get to know the student. I want to get to know their interests. And I don't want them coming in closed-minded. I want them to be open-minded so that the conversation may lead to something wonderful. So be open-minded as well.
Great.
I'll also add that, making sure they have their Purdue email set up and that they have access to it easily and that they know how to log on and all that, because primarily a lot of our communication over the summer will be via email. So that's definitely one of the simplest ways to make sure they're set up for success. I would also recommend getting Boiler Connect on their phones, because most of us will be sending our appointment campaigns through Boiler Connect. And I've noticed that the app is a lot more student friendly. You can set it up so that you have notifications that pop up. And so it would just, I think, make the whole process a lot easier for them.
And I may just add that one of the primary things for your V-STAR appointment, of course, is course requests for the fall. So that's an important thing that we'll be talking about. We're going to get that accomplished. But as Leela and Sanjana and Molly have said, there will be a lot of questions, a lot of discussion, and that's where something like the student information form that you're asked to do as part of V-STAR, I would just suggest putting some real thought into that. So there's some places in there where you can say areas you feel strong about, areas you might have some concerns about, and we all spend a good amount of time before that meeting reviewing that so that we kind of have a sense of what you want to do, who you are, maybe some areas that you want to talk about, so that we can we do a little pre-prep for those meetings so that we can hopefully have a really productive conversation with you. Because that initial meeting is relatively limited in time, and we do some of that on the front end to get to know you a little bit before you ever walk into our virtual offices, so to speak. The only other thing I might say as far as preparation goes is a lot of you may be asked about whether you want to do a humanities class or social science kind of class, some kind of class that may be fulfill a general education kind of requirement. And so a lot of times when I ask students, so what are your interests besides your major? They haven't given that a ton of thought necessarily because they necessarily haven't always had that option before. So you might consider what sort of things you might want to explore at Purdue. If you aren't sure, that's totally fine. But if you give it some thought, that can help us give you some guidance as to some areas you might want to pursue.
That's great. And I like how that connects a bit to the open-mindedness, right? And how that is a part of the overall advising experience, really. And Molly shared a good bit too about students coming and accessing their academic advisors for issues beyond course registration, maybe personal, professional challenges, things that they're facing where they may need some guidance. And if you're open to sharing an example where you've worked with a student who's been, faced with a challenge, I think that could be helpful for people to hear.
Sure. I can give an example from this semester. We had a great student in our program who is transitioning from one of our programs into an engineering program, all with an ABE, but he was moving into a more technical field and definitely capable of it. But came to me about halfway through the semester and said, well, Nate, I'm thinking about dropping this class because I think I'm just kind of overloaded. And so that can be a discussion that you can certainly have with your advisor. And as part of that discussion, his first question was, I want to drop this class. How do I do it? Well, as we talk about it, we get a little bit more into, well, how is he going about studying? How is he approaching his different classes? And along the way, came to find out, not unsurprisingly and not uncommonly, that he was kind of approaching things the same way that he'd been approaching things since high school, that it just sort of worked with him all along. And he'd now transitioned to this more technical field that had slightly different expectations, different planning. And so in just sort of hearing about his process, I was able to make some suggestions that really helped him to not have to drop that class and actually to be more successful in some of his other classes that he didn't bring up initially, but that were actually also kind of trouble spots. And some of it was really simple, just things he hadn't considered, like because this particular portion of this class was online, he was getting some of the homeworks, and then he was having the lectures that he was watching. Well, what he was doing was watching the lectures and then trying the homework. And I said, well, why don't you review the homework and then go into the lecture kind of knowing what the topics are that are related to that homework, so you sort of have a sense of what to watch out for during that lecture. And just that one little tip helped him out a lot, because then he was able to make a lot more progress on that homework. He actually ended up saving time by doing a little bit of that prep work on that homework before the lecture, and then being able to get through the homework a lot easier without having to go back to the lectures later and so on. So that ultimately was great. That was a relatively easy fix. It was a simple conversation on my side, but it turned dropping a class into not dropping a class. And I haven't checked his grades yet. They come out today, but hopefully doing better in all the other classes.
Great, thanks. Maybe another example, or?
I'll share an example from a different perspective. A lot of students come to Purdue wanting engineering, and in exploratory studies, none of our students graduate from our program because we're not set up for that. And so I actually worked with a student who took Calc 1, which we all know to be a challenging course, earned a C, which I think is a good solid grade, but he was so determined to earn a higher grade. In the next semester, he decided to repeat that Calc 1 course and take the subsequent Calc 2 course. I know everybody's eyebrows I've raised. And so, of course, against my advice, he continued. So the best way that I could do was just encourage him to use the resources, the math room, remind him of the drop deadline. And just continue to check in on him about his well-being and how are you juggling these two math courses? How are you doing? We decided to have regular meetings just because he tended to want to hold stress in, and I just invited him to meet with me more regularly. And ultimately, I mean, these were his decisions to make. He thought that he could handle it, even though I advised him against that workload. what turned out was that he learned his limitations. He was able to successfully drop that course because he couldn't just balance the workload in two courses, even though he was repeating one. And I guess I say that as an example of advisors were giving advice, but yet supporting the student in their decision to find their own way and making sure that we offer the support that they need to still maybe finish successfully if they can.
Yeah, that's a nice example too. Sanjana, do you? Okay, good. I will offer that another way where I know I have heard and heard from advisors around their supporting of students is that Purdue actually has a system called the student of concern, approach, and many advisors will connect students with the dean of students who know additional sort of opportunities for students to get support and guidance, beyond what academic advisors can and do offer in terms of, as you were saying, Leela, issues of well-being. And we've been very focused on issues of well-being for our students, understandably, in the context of the pandemic. Hey, so good. Just have a visitor for a second there. And so that's another way too. I know a lot of academic advisors focus on well-being as our faculty and instructors have been doing in the past year. And our reports of students of concern where they just need a little extra support has been a key part of the system of care that we're really trying to offer to students. So what if a student is interested in a different major or a research opportunity, or how do advisors, connect with other advisors or other units across campus? What would you say about that?
Yeah, I can take this one. So I've been very impressed with Purdue the last few years because they have truly invested a lot of time and resources in streamlining student services, which ultimately helps our students succeed. Whether it's through Boiler Connect, or which helps us communicate with students and vice versa so easily. You can put in alerts to people or different offices if you need, so that they know to check in with your student, which is great. But also the university has a central change of major website, which has all of the requirements that you would need for each college and their requirements for changing your major from whatever you are in currently, and in order to enter their college. So it is easier than ever now to really find information and to be able to find out which of our colleagues our students need to reach out to get more information on either research opportunities in SLHS, speech language hearing sciences. We have a lot of research labs within our department, but there are times that we will recommend human development family services labs or other labs like nutrition labs, things that fit our students' interests and ultimately their goals after college. So finding information, which is really the most important part in helping your student make their move, is very easy now. So it's very exciting for me because even though I'm a speech language hearing sciences major, my ultimate goal is to support the student during their time at Purdue. So I have a lot of students that come in and they want to talk about change of major, but they're so anxious because they think somehow I'll be upset about it. And I feel sad that they have let that build up until the meeting, because if I had just known sooner that that's how they felt, I would have just cleared it up, because my job is first to be an academic advisor. Of course, I will help you through our program, but if that's not your ultimate goal, the more we have discussions, the easier it'll be to kind of figure out what are your interests and how can I really help you reach there.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really great point. Your focus is the student and the best path for them. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, I think that advisors at Purdue, we model what we expect student to do, which is that we are regularly attending information sessions about services across campus and annual retreats. So I'm going to talk about PACADA, which is our professional association of academic advisors. And it's a chapter of a professional association called NACADA, which is the National Association. And so PACADA has different information sessions for advisors to attend so that we're constantly aware of services across campus so that we can then refer students to those same services, whether it's learning and or even being reintroduced to programs in different cultural centers and different other support services. We're regularly reviewing those services so that we can share that information with students. And so if as professionals, we find it necessary to have a regular review about resources on campus, then that's for students to do as well. The learning is ongoing and we practice what it is that we want students to actually implement.
If I may just add on to that, Leela, thank you for the PACADA plug, by the way. Refer is a great word there. So we don't want to bounce students between offices to get answers to questions, and that's one of the reasons why we do as much professional development and info sessions and just sort of finding out what's going on, because Purdue's a big place. Things are changing, new programs are coming online, and so we want to stay up to date with them so that we know where to direct students. And there's great resources that are really specific to some of these things that we're talking about, like pre-professional and research. So we're all experts in our own areas for sure, and can certainly speak to research opportunities, placement, and jobs in our own areas. But for my students who are pre-med, definitely they're working with us, but we're also connecting them with the pre-professional advisors who are in the Center for Career Opportunities, who really know medical school requirements in and out. Same with pre-law, pre-dent, any kinds of programs like that. There's a group of individuals that are specifically set up to really know that information. Similar with research opportunities, the Office of Undergraduate Research, that is a great starting point for a lot of students who are looking for research opportunities, and we can help make those connections. Much like Sanjana said, if we just know what's going on, we're happy to make those connections for students.
That's great. So as we think about that and think about the need for, knowing more and learning more, of course, that's what this session is all about. How would you define some terms that are used? So thinking about an appointment campaign, what is an appointment campaign?
Well, I just call it an invitation to meet. So,
okay.
And it's really just a way, it's a term that, that we have our own vocabulary here at Purdue, and most people in every industry do. But a campaign is really just an opportunity for all of your students to get an invitation from a specific advisor to simply meet during a period of time. And so we call that a campaign. But there's a vocabulary of terms, which I do appreciate, that the Undergraduate Advising Office has created so that students can access it, so that they can become familiar with the terms that we just sort of casually say. And we think that we're speaking clearly to students, but these are terms that we use in our everyday vocabulary.
Yeah. Even thinking like what a drop deadline is, right? Yeah. If someone wants to explain that too, maybe.
Sure, I can take that. So there's various deadlines throughout the semester. The drop deadline is the point at which you can, up until that point, you can drop a class. And so there's various pieces that go into that, but it's typically about halfway through the semester. You may get to make the decision if you feel like a class you're not going to be successful in it or not as successful as you like. You do have that opportunity to drop the class without taking the final grade. And that's something that Purdue tries to communicate clearly and regularly. And certainly we talk about it. And, certainly we talk about it to students on an individual basis, if it makes sense in that particular conversation. But that's something that as a student, you just sort of would get used to over the semesters, that comes up about halfway through the semester every term.
Okay, great, thank you. And here's a couple more very particular ones. Get down to some of the details. So thinking about advanced placement, AP credit or transfer credit, what are each of those and how do they come to play in the advising process?
So, AP, IB, advanced credit, or I forget what IB stands for, but they're typically college credit classes that students will take in high school. Transfer credits are typically done at the college level and then transferred to Purdue. So it really depends on what program you're in, how your AP credits can apply or if they can apply. So it's really important for you to talk to your advisor about any potential AP, IB, dual credits, transfer credits you may have. Because you just never know how that will affect our planning for your next 4 years or even the next semester. I know some pre-professional programs don't accept AP credit for lab sciences. So again, it's really important for you to have those discussions with your advisor. If you don't know exactly what you want to do after you graduate from college within your first semester here, of course, you may not know what questions to ask, but that's why kind of making sure you're open in answering any open-ended questions that your advisor asks you, because truly what they're trying to do is help you reach your own personal goal. So make sure that you talk to them about any of those credits. And if you haven't already transferred them to Purdue, please have them sent to admissions@purdue.edu as soon as you can.
If I may add on to that, the student information form that I mentioned earlier is a great spot for you to put that information in advance of your virtual STAR appointment. We know that not all AP scores are going to be released until later this summer. You may have done dual credit in high school, and then you work with your guidance counselor and you're not actually sure what the course was at the institution that you earned it from. If you can get that kind of specific information and put that on the student information form, that really helps us to know what exactly credit you are likely to have coming in, so we can make sure that we advise things that don't meet the same credits. Because the last thing we want to do is to say, oh, well, you need a speech class. Let's make sure we put that on there. If it so happens that you already have that coming in, because if you aren't sure, we can find out. But that's one place where we're going to rely on the student to provide that information to us, particularly at this point when it's not all available in our system yet. So anything that's sort of in progress, AP scores, dual credit, having that information of what the specific class was or what the specific AP test was will be really helpful to just make things smooth with your appointment with us this summer.
The final thing I want to add about dual credit is that because dual credit is taken in high school, students think because they sent their high school transcript to Purdue that then the dual credit should be on record. And dual credit is only awarded from the institution, the college or a university where you actually earn the credit. So you actually have to communicate not with your high school for your transcript, but from the transcript from that college. So whether your high school partner with IU or your high school partner with Purdue Northwest, whatever university that your high school partner with for the dual credit is the institution you have to communicate with in order to have the transcript sent to Purdue. So a lot of times that's confusing to students because they work really hard with their guidance counselor to get the high school transcript to Purdue and they think everything is set. And that's just one more step for them to do.
Okay, but the AP credit will show on the transcript, no? But the dual credit may...
AP will show if they've earned the appropriate score for credit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Very helpful information and details. So as we think about students coming in the fall, what is a opportunity that sometimes can get overlooked by students in their first semester or their first year on campus? What might you say?
I can start out with this one. I think, so one of the biggest opportunities I've seen with first years in general is learning to manage this newfounded time, right? In high school, you have pretty much every hour scheduled and you don't have like a big open chunk of time that you have to figure out when you're going to do what. But in college, you're going to have time between classes where you're going to want to schedule in your your schoolwork and other things that you want to do. So it's really, really important that students come to college kind of intentionally thinking about what is their own personal organizational scheme. What do you use? Do you have a calendar? Do you have an assignment book? You know, personally, I would write things in an assignment book because it was exciting, and then I would forget to open it. So for me, online calendars with notifications, pop-ups, things like that are a lot more useful, just because it's interactive and it's hard to miss. So it really depends on what works for you. An assignment book or a calendar book may be good for you, but there's so many different moving pieces. One of your classes may have a lecture, may have a lab portion and a recitation. So they may be at different times, and it can be a little bit confusing because it's still for the same class. So the easiest way is just to be very intentional about what you're going to use to keep your time organized and plan accordingly.
And maybe be ready to pivot if the first thing you try may not work, right? I often think it's all about experimenting oftentimes.
Absolutely. And the Academic Success Center and your advisors have a lot of really good resources. If the things that you're trying, if they're not working, then just come talk to us, because that's one of the main reasons why we're here.
I will say one of the biggest opportunities that sometimes get overlooked from students is because so much information come out at the beginning of the semester. I think students don't pay attention, but in previous years, Purdue has had opportunities for students to take practice exams of tests that tend to be very challenging for first semester students. And they did suspend it this last year because of COVID protocols. However, there are still practice exams on different websites, so different departmental websites, even especially math. Just taking a practice exam to know, well, what types of questions, if you time yourself, what's the speed of and accuracy that you can complete, and just being proactive in that way. Sometimes just simply get overlooked. Students a lot of times do come around to following that path and doing those practice exams after being at Purdue a semester or two and maybe not getting the grade that they want. But wouldn't it be great if they were just simply out of the gate using some of those resources out there that are established for them to be successful?
I'll just throw in my 3 bits of advice I always give to our students in Virtual Star, which is one, kind of half jokingly, but not half jokingly, is make sure you read your email. It's important, and your Purdue email in particular. Another piece to the overlooked piece is maybe students who maybe have a tough time getting engaged, maybe a little bit more on the introverted side, maybe then set a goal of joining 2 clubs in your first semester. One maybe affiliated with your academic unit, and one maybe not. And for those that are a little bit more extroverted and want to do it all, maybe join 2 clubs your first semester. Maybe just make it manageable. You can always add, but make it manageable. And that kind of leads me to the third point of use all of the help that Purdue has. Things like supplemental instruction, math help group, chemistry help group. We've touched on some of these things. And I just want to really, that supplemental instruction, it's truly that supplemental, not remedial, not any bad way. It's a really, really useful tool. And what I've heard from students before is that when they go, it's like, when I go to supplemental instruction, if I go a couple times, the students I see in there are the students who are doing the best in the class. And it's like, well, there's probably a correlation. They're here, they're doing extra stuff. And my other bit of sort of like hindsight advice is add that early. Start doing that from day one, maybe week 2, actually, probably better way to put it. Because it's harder to add things like supplemental instruction and other things in October when you've already got so many other things going on. But if you just kind of make it part of your week, it's much easier to just keep going with it.
Excellent. One of the things I like to say is, right, we all need to boiler up to reach out, right? Because we're not doing things on our own. We got to boiler up to reach out. And also, some of those things feel risky, and we don't like risk, but sometimes there's wise risks. And that kind of reaching out that you're talking about, those are wise risks, right? Those are the things we want, want to encourage you to do as students when you get here. So I know we're moving to questions in the question answer period, but if we could have each person just share what they love most about being part of the Purdue community, just real quick, that would be great.
I just love that Purdue brings in some amazing students, and whether it's at the business school or the College of Health and Human Sciences, I've just truly had a great time getting to know our students. They have very high expectations for themselves, which really keeps me on my toes and makes me want to be better. So, yep.
I love the energy of Purdue students. I remember, so I've been on the campus now 4 years, and in the first fall that I was here, I saw students in suits on skateboards with their dress shoes in their backpacks or on a bike in suits, and it went on for weeks, and I had to ask people, what is going on? I had never seen such a spectacle, and they were like, IR, like everybody knows IR is going on, which is Industrial Roundtable, which is a very popular and large career fair, career and internship fair. And so just the drive of so many students, I love that energy, that there are so many intentional, driven students at Purdue, people who want to learn, who want to do research, who want those co-curricular experiences. And so I would say, if you're someone who is doubting yourself, give into that energy and connect yourself with someone in your classroom, because if you have a little bit of doubt or you feel like you're just a little bit behind, if you connect to a friend, you will get the energy you need to seek out resources and help, and also be that driven person yourself.
And I would also say students, but Sanjana and Leela said it better than I. So I'll shift and just say the staff and faculty here actually are amazing. I am consistently not amazed exactly, but just impressed at the level of dedication towards student success and making things comfortable and academically rigorous for all students. The number of meetings that I sit in, especially with academic advisors, where the first question is, how is this going to affect students? How can we streamline this for students? So whenever things are changing, new processes coming along, that's the first thing that comes up. Not how am I going to do this or how this is going to add more. Just like how can we make this easier on the students? And so that's something that I've certainly come to appreciate.
Thank you all.
All right. Well, I am back to ask a few more questions and Molly as well, from our audience. And so earlier, we kind of clarified a couple of the terminology and language that we use at Purdue, right? We have a lot of Purdue language that will be new to our first generation students, our first year students in general. And so we want to clarify one other thing. So Sanjana, earlier, you talked about Boiler Connect. And so can you explain a little bit about how to connect to Boiler Connect, how to get on? Is it available on mobile? Is it not? And what the purpose of it is?
Yes. So Boiler Connect is our main appointment and note-taking system. It is also a tool that allows, offices to send alerts to other offices that could just serve as resources for students. From what I have been told from students, Boiler Connect, the app that you can get, you should be able to get it on an Android or an iPhone. And it should be, I would set it up so the notifications are, ready to pop up, because otherwise, I feel like the app may not be used to its maximum potential. But you can use the Boiler Connect feature to send messages to your advisor. If you set it up with your cell phone, which I highly recommend, if there's some things that you may have missed because the email volume is really high and your advisor really needs to get in contact with you because it's something that's really important to your academic record or just you as a Purdue student, it's really easy for us to message you through there. So it's less stressful for you as a student, I think, because there is this other way that you can reach your advisor and your advisor can reach you outside of just email. Virginia, did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it pretty in detail. So thank you. Nate, if you want to add, go ahead.
Just one quick thing, that the communication piece is awesome with Boiler Connect. But one of the additional things is we talked about appointment campaign earlier. So we can reach out to you to say, hey, set a meeting. But you can also do that at any time to say, I want to schedule a meeting with my advisor or another office, depending on what your needs are. And it sort of walks you through, what am I asking? Where do I want to be? And then it actually will show you available time. So it actually connects to all of our schedules. And whenever we have free time and there's not a meeting already in place, you can just schedule right there, tell us a little bit about why you want to meet, and then we're happy to meet with you. So it's harder than ever to not see your advisor.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question that we have is, when I'm done with VSTAR and meeting with my advisor, so at the end of this, what are some things I can do after to get ready for my first semester? So all are welcome to answer that question.
I will start. Typically after VSTAR and you have your registration, the first thing I always tell my students to do is, like, step one is done. Take a break. You probably have been grinding up until this point, wrapping up the senior year, celebrating. You're anxious about what's going to happen at Purdue. And so once you've met with your advisor, you've gotten all of your questions answered, they've gotten your schedule set for fall, take a moment, breathe. And then I will say, I always follow up and say, you'll get further communications and notifications. Continue to read those emails. There's always some type of prep, college prep work before you come to campus to complete, making sure that you do. If you simply read the emails and act on them, you'll be prepared to come to campus. And so take a breather. You don't have to be proactive and plan. So I'm a J person. So I'm using language. I'm a planner. So if you are also a planner and you like lists and you like to check things off, Purdue's going to give you a break this summer. You don't have to create the list. We have the list created for you and we're going to email it to you. All you have to do is just check it off and just read the content.
I would also say a lot of colleges do check-in appointments in the fall, and that is a great opportunity for you to really touch base with your advisor about the things that they may have mentioned at your VSTAR appointment, but you are just too inundated with information or focused on course requests. Whatever it is, there's a lot of information to cover. So please take advantage of those fall check-in appointments. If your advisor sends you a Boiler Connect appointment campaign, please do use the schedule link within them to create an appointment, because that is a much, I would say, normal setting where we could really talk about, okay, now you've started your classes. How are you liking them? Okay, well, what are some of your goals now that you've had this experience? It's really important to just have that piece after VSTAR. So if you can have a check-in appointment with your advisor in the fall, it's a very good fail-safe in case there's things that you need to still think about, but were too overwhelmed during the VSTAR process.
Okay, awesome. And then just one more question. So for transfer students watching, who may be a little farther along in their college experience, what is your biggest advice for transfer students who already have some college experience under their belt?
Meet with your academic advisor. So I say that jokingly, but transfer students, as transfer students will already know, oftentimes have some of the complicated is the wrong word, but they're sort of oftentimes not quite in the 8-semester plan as we've laid it out. Either you've taken different things, slightly different orders. So there's just good communication is key. So during your virtual STAR appointment, in particular, we'll need to make sure we have all of your transfer credit, know what counts for what. But we certainly work with transfer students regularly, and what may happen, and I know I have this happen in some meetings, is, I haven't seen this particular class before, or I haven't seen this particular equivalency before. What I might have to do is talk with some faculty and follow up with you on an answer to whether a particular class can replace another class. Sometimes it's very smooth. Sometimes we have a few questions like that, but just my biggest advice would be to just be patient, help you work through the process, and then just stay in good communication. And that's, the transfer students are a good population to really do sort of long-term planning of what's fall look like, what's spring look like, what is your goal? Do you want to do 2 years? Is 2.5 more likely? Are you a real go-getter and try to want to do one? Might have to talk about that one. But the planning is important for all students, but transfer students in particular.
I would say that also the same advice in terms of, finding your group, finding your connection, getting involved in organizations. I mean, some of that is very, very similar. You want to find your particular place at Purdue in addition to thinking about your academic sort of progress as well, right? College is so much more than just what happens within the classroom. It is the whole experience, and there's lots of learning that happens in every space. So, and transfer students, it's the same. You got to find how Purdue connects for you, and it might be similar or different than your other institution. You might have a chance to try something definitely different than you did at the institution or institutions where you have been. So Purdue has a lot of student organizations.
And one thing I wanted to add about transfer students is and we only get a few in exploratory studies, but the few that I seem to have, they seem to come in very intent on being focused. They want to maximize their time at Purdue so that they can move on into that next stage of life. And so I would advise our transfer students to really touch base with our Center for Career Opportunities. We call it the CCO, very early. One, the CCO has different assessments that they can use with students to help them, I think, refine their communication about what it is exactly that they are striving, that they're looking for out of their college experience and also their career. And that'll help them have a more elevated conversation with their advisor once they've gone through maybe a counseling session with the CCO. So I would say touch base with the CCO as soon as possible to help you discover things about yourself, and again, have a more meaningful conversation with your advisor.
Awesome. Well, that is all the questions that we have. So at this time, I just want to thank our panelists, our awesome academic advisors and directors and staff members across our awesome campus at Purdue that are eager and excited to get to know our new students this year. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy nights to be with us today virtually. And thank you to Dr. Sarvati Saib as well for moderating and hosting this conversation alongside Molly with some wonderful advice earlier on. So at this point, for all of our students and families watching, thank you for joining us. You can watch this session again back if you missed something, you missed an acronym that we used and we tried to define. You can watch that back on our website, on the orientation program's website. V-Star live sessions will land all there. The recordings are free at any time for you to watch back at your own time. Additionally, we invite you to join our next V-Star Live next Thursday. And so please, just stay on top of your Purdue email and continue to work through V-Star all the way through June 30th. Thank you all and have a great night or day, depending where you're watching in the world. Thank you. Bye.